Movies, music, and monsters. Danger, danger. Hey my friends, Dan Monroe here from Movies, Music, and Monsters with a little bit of a different kind of video today, dealing with music, and yeah, I know, it's something I don't really do quite enough of on this channel, but when it comes to this particular artist, John Denver, I not only have a real love for his musical legacy and career, but also kind of an unusual involvement personally with John's music. That, along with the extremely interesting interview segment coming up a little later in the video, will hopefully give all of you a smile on your face and a song in your heart. So, grab your greatest hits album, your round granny glasses, and your favorite acoustic guitar with a bucket of stale popcorn, and let's dive in.
You fill up my senses.
Like a night in the forest.
Ah, yes. John Denver. When you hear his voice, you think he wrote all his songs while petting a deer.
He was so nice. He made Mr. Rogers look like a nightclub bouncer.
My God, you guys are off to an early start. You're talking about one of my musical idols, so show some respect.
Sorry. But he looked like he smelled permanently of pine trees and warm cookies.
Now, to say that I grew up in a musical household would certainly be an understatement. Every night after dinner, the upstairs of my house would be a literal jukebox of popular and alternating musical styles. From my dad's room, I would hear classical music and big bands. From my brother Paul's room, I would hear the Beatles and miscellaneous Star Wars soundtracks, and from my sister's room, I would hear the latest 1970s hits, including the magical music of John Denver, all of which was, unbeknownst to me at the time, entering my very young psyche and forming the foundation for my lifelong love of music.
Hey, it's good to be back home again.
Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. was born on December 31st, 1943, and began playing guitar at a very young age with an instrument that his grandmother gave him, an old 1910 Gibson F-hole jazz guitar, the same guitar, in fact, that he wrote one of his most beloved songs about, called This Old Guitar, and it sounds like this. Later in life, changing his name from Henry Deutschendorf Jr. to simply John Denver, based on his love for Colorado and the Rocky Mountains, spawning one of his greatest hits of all time, Rocky Mountain High. Recording and releasing over 300 songs throughout his career, with over 200 of them which he wrote himself. 33 of his albums and singles were certified gold and platinum in the U.S., with estimated sales of more than 33 million records. Now, even though I grew up hearing John's songs, it wasn't until around 1982, I would have been around 14 years old, that something really led me directly to John Denver's music. One fateful night around Christmas time, I remember my mom having tickets to a John Denver concert. I remember sitting in the theater when the lights went down and the curtain came up, and there on the stage was a single microphone and a single guitar. I was glued to that stage, to that artist, to that sound. There was just something about being there on that evening in the adolescent headspace that I was in at the time that almost literally changed my life overnight. I remember going home from that concert feeling on top of the world. I went out that same week and picked up my very first extremely cheap acoustic guitar and a Reader's Digest songbook and learning to play and sing my very first of many John Denver songs. Now, as strange as it may sound for a guy today who spends his life talking about movies, music, and monsters, back then, to say that I was obsessed with John Denver was an understatement.
The man loved nature so much, squirrels paid him royalties.
I started writing and recording songs of my own. Far out became one of my favorite catchphrases. In 1994, I bought a very special acoustic guitar, which I still have today, by the way, a Guild JF55 to be exact, because that's the same style of guitar that John Denver played in the mid-1970s. I released an album of me singing John Denver songs, which I think sold about 3 copies, and eventually by the early 2000s I was performing John Denver tribute shows. Somehow I just can't see you in a plaid shirt, round glasses, and a blonde wig.
I can.
Yeah, well, if you haven't noticed, I do still wear round glasses.
I always thought that was the John Lennon influence.
More like a hip Ben Franklin. Nope, John Denver. And I didn't do the type of tribute show where I dressed up to look like him. It was just a tribute to the music, spending about 8 or 9 years doing these wonderful performances where literally everybody in the audience would be singing along with you to the words of Annie's song, Back Home Again, and of course, my mom's favorite John Denver song, Grandma's Featherbed.
It was 9 feet high and 6 feet wide, soft as a downy chick. It was made from the feathers of 11 geese, took a whole boat of cloth for the tip. It hold 8 kids, 4 hound dogs, and a figure we'd stole from the shed.
We didn't get much sleep, but we had a lot of fun on Grandma's featherbed.
Foxy Grandma rules.
And during the last year that I did the John Denver tribute shows, my now wife Debbie would come out on stage with me and sing duets and backup vocals. Yeah, really fun times with great music that I do honestly miss quite a bit.
Sometimes this so far feels like a long lost friend. It's good to be back home again. I said, hey, it's so good to be back home again.
I will never forget the morning of October 12th, 1997, when John Denver died in a plane crash. John used to like to fly these experimental aircraft, and on this particular occasion, he was flying a plane called a Long EZ. To this day, no one really exactly knows what happened, and in all reality, I guess it doesn't make any difference. We lost an amazingly talented singer, songwriter, and human being that day, which, if you can believe it, was 27 years ago. But my friends, the wonderful music lives on, bringing things back around full circle to the main reason I'm posting this video. Back in 1990, my brother Paul and I went to Boston, Massachusetts for the 25th anniversary of the Lost in Space cast, and while we were there, we got to visit a television station in Boston where the cast of Lost in Space was getting together the day before the convention. What the heck does John Denver have to do with Lost in Space? I'm getting there anyway when the cast was done filming their segment for the TV station for a show called People Are Talking with host Tom Bergeron. The manager of the station just happened to mention that the very next guest on the upcoming Monday morning show was none other than John Denver. And to me, that was like the coolest news I'd ever heard. but unfortunately we weren't able to stay until the next Monday. Bit of a crushing blow, I can tell you for sure, but, and this is really cool, a couple of weeks later, the manager of the TV station sent me a master copy of John's broadcast on the People Are Talking show, along with a personalized autograph to me from John. How cool is that?
Very cool indeed.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy a very in-depth and personal conversation from 1990 with everyone's favorite country boy, Mr. John Denver.
Put your hands together for our guest today, John Denver. Welcome, John. Good to have you here. Good to have you here. First, I have to ask you, I thought, Oh God was your first acting endeavor, wasn't it?
I had done a couple of television things. It's the only film that I've done, though.
Yeah, and I thought you did so well in that. How come you didn't do more?
Big mistake on my part.
Really? Yeah.
When I did Oh God, I had gotten to a point in my career where where the opportunity to do a movie was there, and a lot of scripts had come my way, but I didn't want to do a film just to do a movie. I wanted to do something that reflected what I'm trying to do with my music and with my life, and Oh God was the first script that I saw that really got to me in that way. And quite simply, there wasn't one after that that moved me in the same way. And I'm still waiting for that script to come my way.
Foxfire was wonderful too, with
great experience working
Jessica
with
Tandy
Hume and Jessica Tandy, and I guess it's going to be shown again, I believe, a little bit later on this month. But that's, I think, the best acting I've done, and a really wonderful piece of material. That could have been a full-length movie, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to have you here. And we were talking backstage, and I read an interview of yours recently where you were talking about the possibility, I don't know if these were exactly your words, but the possibility that the pendulum may be coming back after the 80s, after the materialistic 80s, and now we find out not only are the richest people bankrupt, but our pop favorites are lip-syncing, and it's not a nice time, John.
It goes on and on. I think music is cyclical. It's proven itself to be that. Everything in life has its cycles. And I think that, that there's a possibility that people will come back to the kind of music that I've been doing over the years. It was very interesting to me that the height of my success, greatest success, was during the years of Watergate and Nixon's resignation, a very low point in our country, when people really turned to my kind of music for a sense of uplift, if you will, some inspiration perhaps. And during the Reagan years, when everything had this glossy overcoat of being just great and the world is super and we don't have to worry about anything, then there wasn't much of an ear for the music that I do out there.
Yeah.
And now perhaps it'll be swinging back the other way. And there's some sorrow in that. I think we're in desperate straits here in our country and around the world. And, but hopefully if there are difficult times, then my music can be meaningful for people, and that's why I sing.
All right, over here. Who had a question? I'll get the audience into this. Yeah.
The music that you've written, which is very moving and powerful, can you point to one song as being your favorite, or one that gives you the most inspiration?
Well, it's usually the most recent song that I've written is my favorite song. And, but there are a lot of them that mean a great deal to me. Songs like Calypso, you heard here, is always a very uplifting song. Perhaps Love, Annie's song, Sunshine on My Shoulders, there's some... And then What Are We Making Weapons For? Things like that, I think, are some of the very best things that I've done.
Your music is so personal that I feel easier asking you personal questions, and feel free not to answer them. But when you write a song like Annie's song, and then the marriage ends in divorce, does that song have a bitter sound to it?
Not at all, not at all. You know, the song, all of my songs begin with a very personal experience, or feeling, or memory, or vision. And then what I try to do is say it in as universal a way as possible so that as many people as possible can relate to it. And I think Annie's song, I still have very strong feelings about my wife, Annie. And unfortunately, we grew in different directions, and that happens to people sometimes. When I sing the song, I sing it not only with a remembrance of the best part of our lives together, but I sing it with that sense of universality, which has that particular song, I think, is my most popular song around the world. And there are so many people that I have seen in so many places, in so many countries, people who speak a different language, who have a different expression for their faith, who have different politics. And I sing that song, and you see the guy put his arm around his girl and whisper in her ear, and you know that he's saying, you know, I was going to write that song for you. But he beat me to it, and so that's...
I want to get to the audience, but there was one thing I read of yours, and you're talking about sometimes when you do a show and you're just not there. I mean, you're strumming the guitar and singing the songs, but you're not connected to the performance, but that doesn't always mean that the audience isn't connected. Do you remember the story about the family that came together for your concert?
Yeah, there was an evening, and if I remember correctly, what you're alluding to was in Louisville, Kentucky. And I had a night which for me was a difficult night. It was not, you know, sometimes when you say when you're not there, it's that you're so present in the situation that it's just beyond you, and you feel, there have been times that I felt in buildings of in excess of 20,000 people, and I know everything that's going on in the building. And I'm sensitive to all of that happening around me and just singing my heart out. But all of that is happening effortlessly. Sometimes you really have to work at it to stay and really concentrate and force yourself to be there, and it can be a tough night for you. And in this particular situation, I just happened to remember it because there was this family down in the front row who were obviously not very well-to-do people, and who had spent a night or two in line to be the first to get tickets when there was that kind of demand for my concerts, and to be able to sit in the front row, and had spent a lot of money to be there. And that a family was together like that and had, you know, put out that much effort to be there for my performance, that meant something. But beyond that, I remember getting a letter about a week or so afterward from another family who had grown up with my music, and the parents were now divorced, and they had not been together for several years, and this was the first time that their family had gotten together since the divorce in several years, and it was to be at one of my concerts, and it totally changed their lives, and they were now a family again. Yeah. And so, you know, these magic things happen, and you have nothing to do with it.
I mentioned the Challenger before we went to break. What many people may not know is that you and not Krista McAuliffe was scheduled to be on that space shuttle.
Well, I was instrumental in getting the whole Citizen Space program started, and had pretty much been assured that I was going to fly, and that I would probably have the first flight. And it was only when President Reagan said that they were going to send a teacher first that that changed. And so yes, in all likelihood, in a little different world, I might have been a board challenger, but that's not the way it happened.
You wrote a song, Flying for Me, which you wrote for Krista.
For Krista and the crew. Yeah. I had met all of those folks. I have a very high regard for the astronauts, the astronaut program, and for NASA. I think NASA is one of the best things going on in the world. And Flying for Me was a real expression of how I feel about what they're doing, and hopefully how a lot of people, you know, if they look at it, recognize what's going on with NASA, that they are doing something for all of us as human beings.
Stand up over here.
I just wanted to know, you have such a beautiful, strong voice, and I love you dearly. And I just wanted to know if you've ever had music lessons, singing voice lessons, and if you ever sound like this the day after you sing.
I never really had any formal training. When I was a child, I sang with a group called the Tucson Boys Choir when I lived in Tucson, Arizona. And I always sang, you know, in school choirs and in church. But other than that, no formal training. And as you can hear, my voice is a little husky. This morning I sang a couple of hours last night, and I find it's like any other muscle, your vocal cords, and no matter how you exercise, it's not the same as doing a live performance. The energy is different, I don't know. And once you get in shape, though, I like to go out and do maybe 2 or 3 concerts, have a day off, do 2 or 3 more, have a day off, and then I start singing. And I also feel like just over the last couple of years or so, I'm starting to learn how to sing and to be able to do more with my voice. And I'm really enjoying singing more now than I ever have.
Who else over here? Yeah, you stand up.
Yeah, you pursued such a great career. I was wondering what you have in store for the future or your future goals?
Well, I'd like to do more films. I'd still like to fly in space. I want to learn how to fly a helicopter. I want to keep growing and learning in every aspect of my life. And I want to get my life, I think the major thing I'm working on now is to have my life more in balance, to really be able to give not only to my business, to my career, but time to my family and more time for myself personally. For
you have a new baby. Right?
I have a brand
Jessie.
new baby, well, 18 months old, Jessie Bell. I understand you have a daughter, Jessie.
Yeah.
Something about them little girls, isn't there, Tom?
Yeah.
Boy, oh
something
boy.
about them, I'll tell you.
So it's a pretty wonderful thing in my life, and a real miracle, as a matter of fact. And I want to have more time with my children.
Mm-hmm.
My 2 adopted kids are 16 and 14 now, and I want to have more time for them.
Do you despair? You're so socially active, and I wonder if that gives rise to more optimism or pessimism when you look at your children.
I'm an optimist. I always have been, and I wonder sometimes it's frustrating to see the lengths to which we must go before we can learn. I wonder what it takes to learn, and I wonder even more importantly, what does it take to move people to action? You know, there's so many things that we know now about what's going on with the environment. We know what the problems are, we know what the source of the problems is, we know what the solution is. And yet, what does it take to get people to act, to do the things that we know we must begin to do to create a sustainable future and a healthy environment?
When you go to Alaska, to the site of the Valdez oil spill, and you were covered with oil yourself, and then you hear the president of Exxon saying, it's an oil spill, we cleaned it up, it's fine.
If I had my way, we'd sue the president of Exxon. He ought to be thrown out of job. And Exxon, I would never buy another product from Exxon Oil. You know, but I have the same kind of problem with most of the oil companies. Do you know that right now in this country, the average gas consumption is 21 miles a gallon on the average in the United States? If we were to raise that to 25 miles a gallon, it would negate the need of all the oil that we get from Kuwait and Iraq combined. If we could raise that average consumption to 30 miles a gallon, which is easily achievable, it would rid ourselves of the need from any oil from the entire Persian Gulf. Why is there no comprehensive energy policy in this country? Why? Why do we not have the leadership in our elected government to be moving in that direction? Why do the oil companies resist it so very, very strongly? Why do the automobile manufacturers continue to build? You know, and unfortunately, we're the ones who let them get away with it. We let them get away with it. And I think we have some hard lessons to learn in this country, and I think that a large part of it has to do with the incredible arrogance and greed of people like Lawrence Rawls, who is the CEO of Exxon. Do you know that in 1988, Exxon made $5.2 billion in profit? That's $10,000 a minute for a year in profit. Mr. Rawls, with his salary and perks, made in excess of $9 million that year. And yet here's a guy who, when this occurred up in Prince William Sound, said, I don't understand why people are so upset. It's just an oil spill. 11 million gallons of what we cannot afford to waste, aside from the environmental damage it was done. And it was done, believe me, and they have not finished the job up there. You know, there was a lot of great work that was done by a lot of good people, and I saw the results of that. I was up there twice a year ago, and I was up there at the beginning of this summer to see it again. And we were all surprised at how much oil there still was that had been stirred up by the forces of nature, not dissipated. And that'll keep going on, you know. And it's not the point. The things that they put in place after this accident to make sure that another accident doesn't happen is simply a speed limit, alcohol checks on the crew within an hour before sailing, and a tug that that escorts them entirely out of the harbor, the cost of which in totality is 7 cents a barrel, of Alaskan crude oil. How come that was not in place beforehand? And we're going to pay for it anyway, not the oil companies. I don't know if you read it, oil profits are down this year, but there's still a lot of profit.
I wanted to give you that chance to talk about that. John Denver, give you a chance to hear him tonight at the Wang Center for the Christmas program to benefit Catholic Charities. John, I wish we had more time. Thank you very much. John Denver.
Movies, music, and monsters.